I need to talk to you now because one of our female employees actually kidnapped one of your employees in a parking garage because he didn't want to date her. And
let me stop you there. Okay.
Martians landed,
Yes.
wearing Prada suits,
Yes.
drinking Henry Seltzer,
Yes.
chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here,
Yes, brand.
your message here,
Yes, and?
a verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redford.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world
Yes.
or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
In the hot seat today on Yes Brand is Dan Friker. He's got 15 years plus of experience in driving revenue growth, optimizing sales strategies, all that good stuff. But he's also just a fascinating guy to talk to. And I've had a couple of conversations with Dan, and I felt both times like I would have loved to have had a recording or had it be on air because there's a lot of funny stories, a lot of things that I think you have an ear for. We'll talk about it, but a lot of stuff that goes beyond just business. But at the same time, Dan has a brand. I think that the Dan Fricker brand is like an emerging brand in and of itself. So, Dan, welcome to Yes Brand.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I usually say let's start at the beginning, but I just to give the audience a little bit of background, tell them your professional role entails. What are you an expert at?
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, I help people find employment. I help companies find talent, and I make money in between. So that is effectively what I do. I started with Manpower Group in this space. Worked with them for 20 years. Worked for 2 years with an onshore offshore company called Quest Corp, and then that led into my work at Doherty and Dahl in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, yeah. And that on its face says one thing that you think right away. You're probably a people person. You're probably good with people because people are what you're constantly engaged with. Is that right?
I try to be, and I think, again, at the end of the day, if there is an equal opportunity thing with people, is that crazy? It knows no bounds, young, old, rich, poor, man, woman, child, like be it if you're within management or it's your chosen vocation to help people find jobs. Everyone has bad days or are put in unusual situations. And then there are often executives that have to deal with, how to handle those situations and do it with a straight face.
So there's already an implication of humor and maintaining humor in the face of kind of madness. What's an example of a call that you might get that is a kind of off the beaten path?
I had a situation that was a twofer. With this particular company, we had a consultant that went out to Las Vegas, and he was there for a trade show, and it kind of showing some software and everything else. And let's just say he fell off the wagon while in Vegas, and I was beckoned by this executive to meet and discuss the situation. Right off the bat, I knew it was going to be an unusual meeting when instead of meeting at the corporate office, my client's corporate office, a pretty well-known company here in Minnesota, he wanted to meet at an Asian restaurant outside of town. Okay.
Okay.
And, I sat down with him, and of course, I initially apologized for the situation. It's not representative of our company, and this, things happen. And he was pretty casual about it. He's like, that's fine, that's fine. Well, I need to talk to you now because one of our female employees actually kidnapped one of your employees in a parking garage because he didn't want to date her. And
let me stop you there. Okay, so hold on. So the first call you get is that someone from your team's fallen off the wagon, or a
Right.
consultant's fallen, someone that you're responsible for,
Correct.
and then
Right.
you go now you go to Vegas to a restaurant outside of Vegas. Who are you meeting with at that point?
Well, it was actually in Minnesota, but it
Oh,
was
okay.
at the
Oh,
time
this is to
he
get
was
briefed.
the chief
This is
information officer for a pretty well-known company. So it was
Oh,
a big
okay.
company,
So
big
you're
guy.
getting briefed. You're getting kind of briefed, right?
Right.
Or you're
Yeah. This is
and
not necessarily stuff that companies want to talk about, these kind of maybe very delicate type of situations, but they're very real situations,
right, but the
and
falling off the wagon thing turned out not to be
no, that was not, I mean, that did happen. And
because
that
that can happen
happened
in
2 days
Vegas.
before.
Yeah.
But so like,
Okay, so the guy tells you one of our employees has kidnapped one of your employees. Am I
right.
right? Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, it was a crazy situation. I mean, basically he came, this person literally rented the white Econoline van, made a list which included things like, get gun, get duct tape. And so there was a certain amount of premeditation.
Right.
Person gets out. And this happens to be in a major metropolitan area and in a parking garage where this person decided to do this. It's almost like it scripts itself.
Yeah.
And this person steps out of the van, points the gun, duct tapes the guy in the back of the vehicle, but has to actually exit out of the parking garage, right? Kind of does the little loop-de-loop thing. And while they're kind of waiting to like exit, vacate the building, the person, actually worked themselves free and then proceeded to come out of the van, shoots the guy, but it's a pellet gun. So all it does is just hurt him. And so, hilarity ensued. But and then I would, basically it was like a recreation of Fargo where they had to kind of like document the evidence, the premeditation, everything. So they wanted our cooperation. So yeah, that happened.
So there wasn't well, as much as it could have been a PR kind of disaster, it wasn't really that so much as it was kind of getting your stories straight or figured out because you had a guy that escaped
Yeah.
was your team member who
Yeah.
escaped. The would-be abductor, so what happened to her? What
No, ultimately, I mean, it was apprehended relatively quickly. And it was just kind of an accumulation of the information. And of course, we were talking about, sexual harassment, which this kind of clearly started that way. You have to kind of document, like what happened, who knew what, when. And, by all accounts, the guy was just getting harassed repetitively but didn't say anything. God bless him.
Well,
so
that's
it escalated.
interesting. That's interesting. That's a good case study for both companies to share, to say, look, if you see something, say something, or if someone says something to you and it's inappropriate, maybe admonish them, or let's take it further than that if it needs to be, because you might be going to your car one day and lo and behold, a white van pulls up, and not only is it a kidnapper who's in love with you and feels unrequited, she may also not be the most professional kidnapper in the world. This is not, this is why people, hone their craft. You don't just go grab somebody from a parking lot and think they're not going to get free. I mean, I don't know if she watched a how-to video. There's some great how-to videos on YouTube, but I don't know, what.
I mean, I have found that people within the staffing space, CHROs or people within HR, like I think people within HR they don't get enough credit, right?
Okay.
Because, if you ever have to sign off on your company's, handbook and you wonder why there's a certain policy that seems out of focus, this short answer is that someone did that, Right. So like and I think if you don't have a sense of humor, not that you're not taking the situation seriously. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just being able to kind of cope with the insanity of again, what people do in unusual situations or just because they're having a bad day,
Yeah.
and I think TikTok, YouTube, like all the social media are rife with examples that, a situation probably could have been de-escalated if someone just laughed and just be like, look, but it's like when you have two people that just kind of seem to like continue to raise the bar with frustration and anger, I mean, you kind of get into a certain survival mode where you have to de-escalate and kind of deal with some really serious situations, and then show up for the next morning and do it again. So,
Right. So have you found yourself, do you feel like these are atypical
yeah,
situations, or this stuff happens? This stuff just happens.
it happens more. Again, I think where you typically find the really good stories is, when you're having drinks or cocktails or you're at a conference and sometimes it's almost like a poker game. Like
Yeah.
you throw out like one of your best stories and someone's like, hold my beer, literally. Let me tell you about, this situation. And it's nuts. I mean, every so often you do get books that publish these stories. I mean, this is kind of what makes things like Wolf of Wall Street, or there was a great book about the Enron situation, like The Smartest Men in the Room, where you just take the governor off the engine of, in those cases, just executive, I would just remove any kind of social barriers,
Right.
and,
Right.
and when
And
you've got money, power, people aren't saying no, and it just kind of continues to build until someone finally walks in the room and just is like clutching their pearls, going like, "What are you guys doing?" Like that's a
so
thing.
now with so many years in this field, have you thought of putting stories together, putting some of these anecdotes together?
I all the time. And as a matter of fact, I mean, again, in the staffing industry, the industry that I'm a part of, people joke all the time, like, you take hit shows like The Office or whatnot. Like, if you were to actually just literally retell some of these things that I personally have either experienced or I've had close friends of mine, tell me, it would almost not be believable. Because you would just be like, no, come on, that that didn't happen. That's not, no, it totally happened, but it's so crazy, so audacious. So it would make for an endless series of sitcom hilarity. In a weird way, I think it's the more you kind of put parameters around kind of social norms, there's always a percentage of people that will go out of their way to try to break them.
Yeah. Well, you know what captured it, what captured this kind of thing brilliantly was Night Court. Night
Yeah,
Court was a
great show.
great
Harry Anderson.
series. I could see something like that where
Yeah.
it's, I think for this episode, we may even call this episode "Get Gun, Get Duct Tape," because I think that was like just a funny thing, tales from the HR vaults. Well, let me ask you this. So you're clearly a good storyteller. Where do you think you got the gift of storytelling or the gift of sharing from?
Um, I think it was because in hindsight, it was a cool upbringing. I didn't see it that way. I grew up outside of the city of Chicago, little town, Arlington Heights, Illinois. My grandfather he ultimately became the principal at Sem High School in the city of Chicago on the north side, not too far away from Damon and Montrose. So my grandfather, both my parents were school teachers. So, when you kind of grow up, both parents were school teachers. So it's not like we were rolling in dough. And I think we were also kind of part of that latchkey generation. Like I have a daughter who's literally just turning 13 years old. I think about kind of how I was brought up, because a lot of the time during the summer, my parents would either go back to school or whatever. And so I had an older sister that wasn't that much older than I was, but it's like, oh, just watch your brother for the entire day. And you guys just kind of run around the neighborhood. And we did. And so I think, being around those type of characters, spending a lot of time in and around the city of Chicago, because my grandfather was such a, if you're a school teacher at the time, I don't know if this is still true, you basically got more or less free memberships into every major museum in the city. So you think of like the Field Museum, Museum of Science and Industry, they would even have these days, which again, I can't imagine this is the kosher anymore, but there were certain days they had like VIP tours, and they would like open the archives, like the basements, like the stuff that other people wouldn't. My parents would just drop me off and be like, oh, run around the basement of the Field Museum where like, there were docents and stuff like that, but like you got to see stuff.
Yeah.
But like run around a major museum in the city of downtown Chicago by yourself for a couple hours. We'll pick you up at 5, like that was the kind of stuff. And so I think I was naturally a curious person growing up around, I think teachers, it's hard to not be biased, but it's like, I don't think teachers get enough in terms of being able to have to connect with such a wide audience. You have to be able to connect with them. It's reality in reality's terms. Right. And, that is a difficult thing on the best of days. And I think, again, if you're surrounded by that, I think over time, you just kind of like, it just becomes like a muscle that you didn't even know you had, and I clearly do. I mean, I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Minnesota, but I got my master's in HR from the Carlson School at the University of Minnesota. And it was really because I wanted to get better and more defined in this craft. And, we literally started this conversation by talking about an unusual situation. I have dozens of examples. But again, at the end of the day, you still got to put people to work and still got to find more talent. So,
yeah. But, there's a couple things that pop into my head. One is that, okay, the teaching background makes sense because you have this, not just a curiosity, but a real appreciation for knowledge. You just underscored it there. I wanted to get better at my craft. And, from our previous conversations, you do a lot of learning, kind of constantly learning about stuff. And you probably could share knowledge about subjects beyond HR. And HR is, because it's human, it's got a very kind of broad application, and I can't help but think, if you had a book, if you had a book of stories or a book of, or something like that, this would be that forum where you would be like, yes, and get my book, my book's out, get gun, get duct tape, whatever, my book's coming out. Because I feel like the humor aspect of it does diffuse tension. We live in a world that's so rife with tension. It needs diffusion. Have you thought about, beyond just what you do in your job, the impact that you might have opening up your worldview, your sense of humor and other things to a wider audience?
I think the short answer is yes. But I do think it's also a little complicated. I mean, I think social media for, people of my generation, plus or minus, right? We were brought up without it, right? My daughter was brought up with an iPad at the earliest of age and was watching videos and whatever. Like, you have these entire generations that how they communicate and how comfortable they are in a social media setting are demonstrably different, right? And I think when I'll just use myself as an example. I was petrified to start doing things like a podcast and put myself out on social media because of, I think, of saying or being perceived of being insensitive or not caring or just basically stepping on a landmine. Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of executives quietly feel the same way. And those that are out there in social media, like, do so almost at their own peril. Right.
Yeah.
And, but I think there is something to be said about if you have a sincerity and you have the truth, or at least the truth as I experienced it. If we are to do anything, it's really to kind of maybe help people better communicate in these situations. And maybe I'll kind of tie both two concepts together.
Yeah.
I sit on one of the career advisory boards at the University of Minnesota within the College of Science and Engineering. And I've been doing this now, I think 7 years ago, or going into the 7th year. It sounds right. I'm going to move on. Brilliant kids, men and women of all, everything from bachelor's to master's to PhD students from astrophysics, chemistry, whatever. And one of the things that we really work on is how to get those particular students to market themselves, to articulate their brand. Because if you ask them about their research, you ask them about their capstone project, they will go into in crazy detail, or in many cases even talk about practical application of the research. But when you ask them something like, well, tell me about yourself, they can't, right? And you see this, by the way, this is not a problem just at the University of Minnesota. Like, you see this across people, especially in, the sciences, if you will. You see this with people that are within the spectrum. And, being able to talk about yourself and how you can, when I say deliver value, I mean, it's basically the fancy way of saying interviewing and actually winning the job, right?
Yeah.
One could argue the difference between you getting a job and not getting a job is that you articulated your value better, more succinctly, and you were able to connect with the person sitting across from you. It is the most frustrating thing to give a recruiter feedback. Oh, this person isn't a cultural fit. It's a weird euphemism. It's like it's words, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And you can go in any direction. Like, is it because you're biased, or is it because, like, the person couldn't communicate? Like, there's, but I've met well-educated grown adults who can't connect. They can't articulate their brand. And some of them just haven't even thought of it. And so once you kind of learn how to do that, I think that's an important step. But I also think there's been some sizable research around, like, the impact of AI. Mm-hmm. And I was recently interviewed for Forbes magazine. Don't know if it'll come out, but it was a good interview. But basically, I have been searching for quite a while around AI in HR. Like, where are the case studies?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what you actually see, and the data is starting to show more and more, is people are finding jobs the way they did 25 years ago, which is, who do you know? This doesn't make any sense. You have these tools. There's new tools coming to the market all the time. LinkedIn did a study that was published in Q4 of last year that basically said 95% of people that apply via LinkedIn don't even get responses. The satisfaction of candidate experience interviewing is at an all-time low. And yet you still have 3/4 of companies out there that utilize hiring agencies in some way, shape, or form to find people. So, like, you see, like, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah. There's more technology to find people. People aren't able to connect with jobs or articulate who they are, and so it almost comes down to something. Is everyone just suffering from a big branding issue?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, Dan. And There's a lot in there to kind of reflect on and unpack, not the least of which is you talked a lot about social media, and that's part of the reason why these kids have such a struggle articulating, because the medium that they're used to communicating on doesn't afford them the luxury of articulation. It's not a medium that's really, it's funny because, yeah, there's messages that are going subliminally and kind of going, back and forth, but really communicating their value is so needed. That's something that's so needed among young people today, not only to get hired, I think almost to underscore their self-esteem, and to strengthen it. So there's a lot to consider going forward in terms of sharing stories. We started with some funny anecdotal stuff, and that also certainly has its place. But there's layers. I think that teacher background, is something to really give some thought to as we talk about what forms your speaking and your humor and your knowledge can possibly take. As we circle around to I like to give my guests the last word. First of all, before you, I would like you to share maybe a piece of advice for young people that are entering the job market today. And then, but first, let us know where to find you. Let the audience know where they can find out more about you.
I would say just find me on LinkedIn. Just Daniel Fricker, and you'll find me on LinkedIn, and you can connect me with me there. I'm constantly posting articles about workforce trends that I think maybe aren't as prevalent, at least the things that I find interesting. So, but yeah, that's where you'll find me. Yeah, again, as I'm building my social media, it's not like I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't have some of this other stuff. I've yet to go on TikTok. I don't even know if is that a thing now anymore.
That's funny that you say. I don't even know if they'd take me.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's still a thing. I think it's a thing. It's a thing now. But then again, TikTok is its own world, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a thought for the young people entering the workforce.
So here's what I will tell you. There are so many resources today, right now, at your fingertips that used to be much more difficult to get, right? If you're going into the professional world, establishing a LinkedIn profile is one of the top ways to get noticed out there. But number two, there are so many great YouTube channels around like how to even build your resume, right? And even something as basic of building a resume that is something called ATS friendly, applicant tracking system friendly. And by the way, I'll raise my hand and say, I didn't even know it. So it's not like it had been so long since I built a resume, right? That when I was asked to do it, it wasn't ATS friendly. You go to Microsoft, Word, you open up Word, and I think the first dozen examples stylistically of what your resume is supposed to look like isn't what they call applicant tracking system friendly. So all these tools today pull things from your resume, but if it's not ATS friendly, then whatever's in the system on the receiving end, it will just look like garbage, and you're going to get rejected before you even start the search. And so those are the kind of where I typically start with people that are, again, high school graduates, bachelor's graduates, PhD, mid-career folks. Is you have to treat this like almost a part-time job is to find a new job, because again, statistically, the best way you're going to get a job is to actually know someone or someone that knows someone to get you in. Still number one, by the way, has been for the last 3 decades, right? And utilizing the resources that you can find to help build that resume, to help build your brand and be able to tell your story. There are, again, just infinitesimal more resources out there today than there was even 5 years ago. But when I ask people, have you actually done the research and homework? Usually the answer is no. So
Yeah.
that's the best advice I can give you.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.